It is another Human First AI marketing podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Avenue 9. You can find us at avenue9.com, where we do human first context engineering for your marketing, making sure that you do the work in strategy first and figuring out your employees' strengths and weaknesses, mapping those to AI, and figure out how you can put together a marketing system that helps you punch above your weight, especially for small businesses, help you compete with the big brands in this era of AI. And my guest this week is David Dobrin. He is CEO and co-founder of Original Voices. You can find them at originalvoices.ai. And they do some really cool work on the audience intelligence side. And I've been really excited for this weeks, David, since we scheduled this one, to talk about what that looks like, how we can actually add human context to the AI and the marketing that we're creating just to get better and more effective output for humans instead of just generating slop. What are your opening thoughts on this?
Yeah, no, it's great to be with you. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. So we're building what we call the human context layer for AI. And what that means in practice is that we enable AI models and agents to query and get data and insights about real audiences, so that the models and agents have data and context to ground, inform, and shape the outputs that they're responsible for producing. And the core thesis is that the models are extremely capable, but as they're responsible for more and more workflows, there's two main problems that are emerging. So the first is that everyone has access to the same models. And so there's a differentiation problem, because if you're using these models to create content, everyone else has access to the same models, and so often outputs will look and sound the same. And the second problem is what we call relevance, where these models can produce thousands of pieces of content in seconds, but because they fundamentally don't have context or understanding about what specific audiences think and feel, the models guess. And so the result is you often get generic outputs, or AI slop, as it's often known. And so what we're looking to do is to give these agents and models context about audiences, so that they can A, differentiate their outputs, and B, create outputs that are more targeted, personalized, and relevant.
Yeah, I think that's huge for all the reasons you mentioned, but also the fact that AI is kind of built to produce popularity contest or go towards the middle and whatever seems most likely. And that can really create some problems when we're talking about diversity or even just niche businesses and stuff, where you're trying to not sound like everybody else or not pitch the same offerings that everybody else is. That's where we really have to do some hard work to make it do something creative or something different for a specific audience, right?
Yeah, totally. And we've very much leaned into the approach of we're using AI to amplify and augment real people and how they see the world, rather than replacing them. And so the way we do it and the approach we've taken is that we've actually created a consumer application that powers our enterprise and our enterprise API. And the consumer application is called Twinio. And that's where real people are able to create and train their own digital twin. So an AI version of themselves that they train by answering lots of questions about themselves and their life and sharing other forms of data. And then once trained, a twin is able to leverage the knowledge it has on somebody to answer a question on their behalf. But the key difference with the approach that we've taken is that there's always a human in the loop. So they train their twin by answering questions. They update their twin because we continuously ask them new questions, including topical questions. And most importantly, they validate their twin. So whenever a twin answers a question on their behalf, they get a notification on the app to say, here's the survey question, here's how your twin answered. And they get the opportunity to rate and review the answer. And so what that means in practice is that if you're using our API or MCP in Claude or ChatGPT, or if you've got your own agent, you can essentially query this network of digital twins that each represent real people. And you can bring their answers, insights, and feedback into your context window to create outputs that reflect, to the point that you mentioned, reflect your audience, but are also more likely to engage with that particular audience. And without that sort of like human in the loop process, then, like you said, the AI models and agents just revert to the mean, and you get content that actually doesn't really talk to anybody because it doesn't understand what specific audiences like really think or feel. And so, yeah, like we're massive advocates of we think real people matter. We think real people and their views about the world matter. And instead of using AI to replace real people by creating like synthetic personas or just aggregating web data, we wanted to find an approach that enables us to amplify and augment how real people see the world. And we've got 22,000 digital twins now, mostly in the US and the UK. And so we represent all different ages, demographic, interest areas, and make that data available to AI agents and models. And whenever someone's digital twin gets used, we share the revenue and they get paid. We're incentivizing people and rewarding them for their twin answering on their behalf and then validating their twin's answer as well.
Nice. Yeah. It seems like the modern way of doing sort of audience research that we would have done before with cold callers and robots or online surveys and stuff. But I like that we're keeping humans in the loop, but we're also making that as easy as possible and using the modern approach to do that. And I've done similar things with PR. I like the website featured.com where I can create my digital avatar of what I speak about and what questions I can answer. And then it can use AI to match up questions that people would likely ask me and then help me generate responses and stuff. Even though I don't generally use the AI responses too much, it's nice to have those and at least get the conversation started or be able to check them and see how close they are to my digital twin in that regard. So I think the consumer side is fun, but really for marketing, this seems super powerful to me because I stole this from Seth Godin. But if you're going to make good marketing, you got 3 challenges. You got to know yourself, what you stand for, what your brand is, who your audience is and the ideal target, who are you making it for? And then the change you're trying to make. What's the story we're trying to tell them or what's the action we're trying to get them to take? Why is this better or different than anybody else? And if we can figure out those kind of three things, the problem solution, the audience, and what we're doing, we can really create some really targeted marketing that creates more wins than losses. We're not wasting trying to advertise to everybody. We're not just guessing and trying to come up with whatever slop hits, throwing a lot of spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. We're actually creating marketing for a person and a persona. And what I found in modern marketing that's so cool is it's no longer about just a persona of this like mythical, we're targeting a marketing VP in their 30s to 50s and demographic information. We can get really specific opinions and really interesting data, especially from an AI twin that could read into some of their preferences or make analogies and have access to data that we wouldn't otherwise have with demographics. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. So I'm from a market research background. I've spent most of my career working for one of the big online market research companies. And that's like mostly what inspired this idea and the approach that we've taken. And the thesis is very much that understanding your customer has always been important. But in the age of AI, it's actually more important than ever. Because as people increasingly use either tools like ChatGPT or Claude, or as agents are increasingly and autonomously responsible for generating content or creating advertising campaigns or generating social media copy, if those AI tools and agents don't have an understanding of what their target audience thinks, feels, what language they use, what preferences they have, what concerns they have, then the outputs aren't going to reflect those things. And so you get outputs that look good because AI is a good copywriter, but they're not necessarily resonant. They're very surface level. And
let me jump in there for a second, because I think we all like that Claude and ChatGPT are learning more about us as we go along. The more we use the tool, the more memory it has and context it has about who we are and what we like. But that doesn't say anything about the other side. Exactly. Right? Who's on the other end of this?
That's exactly. And we started the company because we thought in the future, how will an agent or someone using an AI tool effectively do market research to understand their audience? And we thought it's not necessarily going to make sense to go to a traditional market research company to commission a survey that's going to take a week to get the data. Like, the agent needs access to data and insights right now. But at the same time, we still want that human grounding where real people are still in the loop and you can validate answers with the real people. And so that's where we ended up with the approach where we've got like AI agents or AI tools on the one side. We've got digital twins that each represent real people on the other side. And we've built the infrastructure that enables agents to ask questions of the digital twins and get data and insights back. And we're really seeing ourselves as like this layer where you can add us to these tools. And if you run a test side by side, if you just use Claude versus if you use Claude plus original voices, then anecdotally, but also in the performance outcomes, you can see the difference. On one side, you have good copy, but it might describe a product or feature quite well. And on the other side, you have good copy combined with that actually reflects and talks to a specific audience rather than just describing a product or feature at a very high level.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense here. And I'm wondering about the questions themselves
Yeah.
because I get creative. Like I said, we don't really need demographic information. We've been doing marketing automation and audience research and targeting, and we can even get some intent data, or we can do some generic research on ChatGPT and say, what are the top most common challenges for VPs of marketing or whoever we're targeting? But I'm wondering how people are getting creative with your surveys of what type of, is it preference data? Is it personality? Is it what kind of data creates the best outcomes in these questions that you're pushing to your
Yeah, so
humans?
so it's quite interesting. So the way it works is almost like you can think of it as two parameters. So like the first parameter is where you describe an audience in natural language. So it might be parents who live in London with children of a certain age. It might be men or women in the US over a certain age that own a dog, whatever it might be. And then the second parameter is either a topic, or it could be a set of questions, or it could be a website or an app. And when you put that into an AI tool like Claude, for example, we'll pick up the audience that you're interested in, and then we'll pick up the other parameter. So if it's a website, we might generate a set of questions saying, what do you think of this website? What stands out to you? What information is missing? What would make you click on this website? What concerns do you have? And so on. So we'll come up with a set of like context specific questions to ask the digital twins to get their insights and feedback on those specific questions. And or you could just ask your own set of questions, or you could just say, I want to know how parents, the struggles they have with managing their screen time and being present with their kids. And Claude will then come up with 5 or 10 questions on that particular topic. They're all open questions usually, and the data that you get back are individual open-end responses from the digital twins of real people that you see in the context window. And then you can instruct the AI tool to do what you want with it. So if you just want to do a user research piece, you can say, okay, user data and insights to generate me a research report. Or if you're saying I'm creating a set of Facebook ads, you can say user data and insights to create a relevant set of Facebook ads for this app. It's super versatile is the real answer, because the audience is quite simple, but the actual input, it could be a set of questions, it could be a topic and we'll generate questions, it could be a website, it could be an app. And then the use cases are also quite versatile in that you can get it to generate a research report, rewrite a landing page, rewrite a product description. You could get the twins to test a set of ad creatives. Here's 10 ads. What 3 do you find most compelling? Like, there's lots of ways that you can use the tool. And that's what we find is the power of it, because you've almost got this data asset at your fingertips that you can put anything to and then use to do anything with.
Yeah, I'm wondering about the sensitivity. Obviously, with the AI kind of digital twins, those are going to be updated over time as people ask questions.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering about some like sentiment analysis and stuff, or swaying opinions, because you and I mentioned before we hit record that when we think about the optimistic or pessimistic future of AI, we tend to change quite a bit. And I see this happening in a lot of industries and marketing too, where I got to imagine people's opinions of AI generated content are changing on a regular
Yeah.
basis. And so something that was like, I describe it like a magic trick. When you see it the first time, you're like, oh, wow, that's incredible. When you see it the second time, you go, oh, that's the same trick they did last time.
Yeah.
And once you know how it works, it's all right. They saved some time there. They didn't use it to create something new. So I'm wondering about like these digital twins. How good do you think they would be about shaping preferences? Are you worried, concerns, stock market type things? I mean, sure is like the ultimate of this, like what's the brand affinity question, but do you have enough data there, or is it probably more longer term, like 30, 90-day changes versus data?
Yeah, it's probably that. So the way it works is that when a question gets posed to a digital twin, and we can just take this on an individual basis, we'll look at that twin's training data. So all the knowledge, the profile data, the bio, all the transcripts from training their twin. And then we'll use all of that data to predict and generate a response that twin would give to this question. And we pass that back. And then we have the validation piece where the real person then gets a notification to say, this was the question, this is how your twin answered, rate the answer out of 5, and then there's a box for them to put some feedback. And so we've had 125,000 twin answers rated now. We've got a high accuracy score, but we want people to give feedback on the answer. So they might say, yeah, that answer was correct, but on the weekends, I actually like to walk my dog 3 times a day instead of twice a day. And then we use that feedback to update the twin training data so that the next time that twin gets asked a question, we've got enhanced context and we'll give a more accurate answer because we've got more data and insights about that person. If we don't feel that we have enough context in the training data to generate an answer for that twin, then we won't generate it. And each twin answer comes with a confidence score, and we won't show answers that are below a certain threshold because we don't have confidence that the answer we've generated will be accurate enough. And so we've got like those like guardrails in place. And then we also have guardrails on like the types of questions you can ask a twin. So you can't ask a twin for any personally identifiable information. That request will just fail. You can't ask questions that are designed to specifically influence specific people. That request will fail as well. So you can mostly ask like high-level questions about particular topics. The twins will answer. The real people will feedback. And we go through that. But we want people to be in the loop and regularly answering new questions, including topical questions. So we'll run a question about the latest world events, and then we've got a set of twins that have context about what's happening in the world, which we think is the power of what we're doing, because we can go back to real people, get new insight and information, and it's this ongoing, quite dynamic process rather than like a fixed sort of data set that's static and you can't actually do anything more with it because you haven't got the people that you can talk to. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
I think so. That's kind of what I was assuming. Where do you think this will play out? I think that there is, if I'm the user, I want my digital twin to be as accurate as possible because it's creating answers and context about me here. So it doesn't benefit me to give it wrong answers.
No, exactly.
The incentive is to keep it updated and
totally. And we're still in the early stages in our journey, but there's lots more that we could do and lots of areas we could move into if everyone has a digital twin that's if it's able to accurately reflect their views and opinions, which is like the deepest aspects of who we are as humans. If we're able to crack that, then there's lots of other things that a twin may be able to do on your behalf. So it may be able to review products, make purchase recommendations. You might enable other people to chat with your twin. You might eventually be able to connect your twin to other websites and apps to personalize experiences on other platforms. So there's lots of applications on the consumer side, there's lots of applications that we could explore, but all come down to the point that you just made, which is it's in people's interest to create a high quality twin that accurately represents and reflects who they are and to keep that up to date. And for those that don't do it well enough, then we just exclude from the process because they're not useful to us.
Yeah.
And so we've got quite high quality controls in place to make sure that only high quality data is made available and used. And for any that's not, then we just put to one side and we don't use it or include it.
And then what about from the business side? I know we've been working on buyer intent data and optimizing our marketing and stuff for a long time, and predictive analytics has gotten really good. What are some of the best use cases you've seen or examples of success stories or ways that you think maybe in the future we would be able to do if we had better digital twins, better data on our audience?
Yeah, no, totally. So the main use cases that we're seeing at the moment are mostly focused on creative. So ad generation is a big one, mostly because AI gives you incredible advantages in terms of like speed, cost, and scale. But our belief, like I said before, is that the next frontier is like relevance. It's okay, you can produce a lot of content very quickly. It doesn't cost that much. That's brilliant. But how do you know it's going to perform well? And how do you differentiate from every other person that's also using AI for this purpose? And we think the answer is differentiated data at the point of inference. And so ad or content creation is like a big use case that we're seeing. And also related to that is that I mentioned it before, like this idea of pre-testing or validating creative. So you've got 5 different headlines. What one does the target audience think is the most compelling and that you should maybe go with first and then go try the second one and the third one and so on. So they're 2 areas that we're excited about. And then the other areas is doing like this idea of like deep customer research, but in AI and agentic context. So you can give your AI model or agent a huge amount of data and insight about your target audience, and that almost acts as this like foundational layer. So whenever you're using your AI agent or model, it can then use this data and insight about the audiences to inform lots of other things that you may be using those tools for. So I'd say that's where we are at the moment. But I guess in terms of like our vision and where we see things going, we basically want to get to a point where every single AI workflow either uses human insight to inform outputs and or to pre-test and validate outputs before you put them live. And so we really want to see ourselves as this like foundational infrastructure layer where this is how agents and models can get insight and feedback about real people, and then use that in whatever context you're using an AI agent or model for. And so that's really where we want to get to, is that actually our data and insight is being used across use cases in the AI stack. And then maybe in the future, one day, agents themselves will discover our platform, discover our MCP, will pay for our MCP, and will just go off and use our data and as part of their workflows. There's lots of ways that this could go.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question for you, is what do you think it looks like kind of 5 to 7 years from now? Assuming, let's say, pre like super intelligence or anything. I think that's the horizon where none of us know what happens after that. But do you see a world where AI sellers are selling to AI digital twins and then they're bringing back the recommendations, or is it all at once? We're connecting to these human intelligence layers of AI to create marketing, which is being seen by humans, which is also being seen by agents. And we're just trying to build trust across all those at the same time.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I guess if we take a step back, I think about it in two ways. There's like the trajectory of the technology and how fast things are moving. And I think in that context, I feel like we're on an exponential, and like we've seen it in our businesses. We're using these AI tools more and more. The rate of progress does feel like it's accelerating at an exciting and scary rate. So there's like the progress of the technology, and then there's a diffusion of that technology in the real world. So we're an AI native startup. We're right at the frontier of using these tools, but it's a big world out there. There's lots of companies, there's lots of people. Like, how long is it going to take for all of these other parts of the economy to be using and leveraging these tools in the way that we might be as a AI native startup? And I think that's one way I think about it, is like the technology might be on an exponential, but it's a question mark about how quickly that technology is going to diffuse throughout the whole economy. As it relates to us, obviously the honest answer is I don't know, but I can see a world in which agents are responsible for a very large percentage of tasks and workflows in a marketing context. And I can see those agents having the ability to go and discover tools or data that they might need in order to execute their workflows. That could be on an ad hoc or a permanent basis. And then I can see them basically discovering a tool, saying, yep, I want this tool is the right tool for the job, or this is the data I need to execute this workflow. I'm going to pay for that tool, and then I'm going to use the tool, and then I'm going to use the data and insights, and then I'm going to go off and do whatever it is that I need to do. That feels like extreme and quite mad when you think about it, but I can see, this isn't a prediction, it's more I can see that's the way in which this may go. And for us, that's quite exciting, because if we can be discovered by agents and then used by agents, and all of this is like automated, and our moat is that we've got this like proprietary data stack that makes unique data and insights available to these agents to go and do what they need to do. That would be amazing. And in the interim step, we very much see ourselves as like an augmentation layer. So mostly focused on people using AI tools and how they can go and get access to unique data and insights about their audience to differentiate and improve their outputs. And then we're seeing like agentic use cases as well. But even those are still definitely being built, managed by people. And
yeah, it's fascinating. I was first introduced to audience research when I was on the radio. I was a top 40 DJ and stuff, and I went to one of these where we test songs, and it turns out that I learned a lot about how to use AI tools, because the songs that tested the best were not the best songs. They were the
Totally.
ones that people hated the least. And so it melds to the middle. It rounds off the edges of the artists and things that were the most interesting. And then it kind of defaults to Duran was always the one that came up on ours because I was a retro radio station, which is they have great music. There's good songs. They're
Yeah.
pleasant. Everybody rates them maybe 3 or 4 out of 5. Nobody really, some people are. Yeah, they got plenty of fans that are fives, but nobody's really rating it a 1. They're not
Yeah.
terrible. They're not turning people off. But the more unusual you get, the more likely somebody rates it a 1. The more
Yeah.
somebody
For sure. You get
hates
the
it.
extremes.
And I
Yeah.
see this as extremely valuable as we go forward to kind of understand that, like, the generic AI or creating something for everybody is not going to work because it really rounds off those edges. It smooths it out and it makes it really boring. But also, sometimes the famous Henry Ford quote is, which is, if you asked everybody what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, not a
Mm.
car. And I see that a lot too, even with those music preferences, is that's
Yeah.
fine for a while, but we got this perfect mix of, okay, we need a certain amount of new songs, and new songs people want to hear more than old songs, so they have to play more often than the other songs. Otherwise you don't get the familiarity, or people call up and they request the same song every hour because
Right.
they have to play, and that gets annoying too in top 40. But there's this different thing that people don't really know what they want, or they think they know what they want in the short term but not the long term. And it'll ruin your radio station if you let the audience drive it. And I feel like we're getting there with AI and especially agents and stuff, that we got to be really careful to keep adding in these context layers of what do we want to do? What kind of clients do we want to attract? And still doing that work first, but then also, what does the client want? What are they looking for? And then how do we do what's in their best interest versus what are they asking
Yeah.
for? And that's going to be the challenge of business for, I think, the foreseeable future. Those core problems of short term, long term trade offs. Yeah, everybody wants it faster, better, and cheaper at the same time, but life doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So that to me, I think, still lends to this idea that in the future we're still going to need humans and AI, and agents can do some of the things but not all of the things, and some will create worse outcomes and some will create better. But I'll give you one last shot at it. If you look at how it plays out in our lifetime 30 years from now, what do you think all that means? You think we're able to balance it, or and AI is either able to get smart enough to know what we need and not just what we want, or will there always be the spectrum of humans fighting with AI and AI trying to do what's best for us and the human experience?
Yeah, I don't know, and I think I'm one of those people that I think about this a lot. Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm excited about the future, and I buy into the narrative. There's going to be a world of abundance and human creativity. It's going to prosper, and we're going to have more time to do what makes us fundamentally human. And then other times I'm like, oh my, what are we going to? Is that going to happen? What happens if people lose their purpose? And we've had like centuries of human purpose revolving around the work or being productive. And what does that mean in a world of AI that can do those things better than us? And the negative consequences that could have. And you know that my view changes each and every minute of the day. So
Yeah.
I'm not really sure where it goes. But what I can say is that we have specifically built our company on the basis that people matter, what they think and how they see the world matters. And in a world of AI, we think that should matter more, not less. And even when humans are messy, even when it's confusing, even when you get potentially conflicting statements, it matters. And enabling these AI tools that people are increasingly using because they're so effective, to give those models and agents the ability to tap into that insight, sometimes messiness, sometimes clarity, but ultimately human context, we think it matters and it's important. And doing that in a fundamentally human grounded way is a deliberate approach that we've taken. And yeah, we'll see.
Amazing. Yeah, we will. And I love the mission that you're on. So I wanted to highlight it here in this show. And I hope people get it, because I think more and more we're in this culture of like selfishness, that it's about us and our algorithm and what we want, but we don't, I think, really focus on that empathy to hear what other people want. And it's hard to imagine what their algorithm even looks like and what they see
Yeah.
when they pull up the news or their social feeds or they go about their day and their job. Unless we're in it, it's really hard to get their perspective. And I think Original Voices, it's at originalvoices.ai. You can find David on LinkedIn as well. Links are in the notes below. But I think it's really important to have original voices, to keep creating original content, and to keep trying to find that empathy of understanding where our audience is and how we can best help them. That's not going away anytime soon.
Totally. Completely agree.
Awesome. Again, for that, go to originalvoices.ai, David Dobrin on LinkedIn, or find me, Mike Montague. LinkedIn is my preferred channel. YouTube is where the show happens to be blowing up. So if you're not a subscriber on YouTube yet, do that. Join like 45,000 other people that are already subscribed over there. And avenue9.com. If you're looking for help in figuring out your story and making sure your brand voice is correct, that includes like AEO and figuring out how AI talks about your business. That's what I do at Avenue 9, help you build your context layer for your marketing so that you can build better stuff. Until next time, keep going. Have fun, everybody.